Her uncertainty met his patience. "We have all night," said the Lakota Western love tales. The road stretched ahead in long, quiet lines, bordered by dry grass that moved gently with the wind. As she stepped out of the old bus, she felt small, like someone standing at the edge of a life she did not fully understand yet. She had come here because staying where she was had become unbearable. The past felt heavy and she needed space, real space, to breathe again. Her name was rarely spoken these days, even by herself. She had learned that names carried memories, and memories carried pain. What mattered now was movement. The West promised distance from noise, from people who asked too many questions, from reminders she was not ready to face. She told herself this was not running away. It was simply choosing quiet. The place where she would stay was far from any town. A modest ranch rested between open land and low hills. There were no bright lights, no rushing cars, no constant voices. Only wind, animals, and long hours of silence. At first, the quiet unsettled her. Silence had a way of making thoughts louder, but she welcomed it anyway, believing that if she stayed long enough, the noise inside her would soften. On her first evening, she noticed him from a distance. He was working near the fence line, moving with steady purpose. There was nothing hurried about him. Every step, every motion seemed calm and intentional. He did not look her way right away, and oddly, that made her feel more at ease. She had grown used to being watched, judged, measured. His lack of attention felt like respect. When they finally spoke, it was brief. Simple words, practical words, no questions that crossed boundaries. He introduced himself without pride or performance. His voice was low and even, carrying the tone of someone who did not need to prove anything. She sensed that he belonged to this land in a way she never could. The ground, the sky, the animals, they all seemed familiar to him like old friends. She learned quickly that he was Lakota, raised with strong values passed down through stories, not lectures. He did not talk much about himself, but when he did, his words were thoughtful. He listened more than he spoke. For someone like her, who had spent years being talked over or rushed, this was unfamiliar territory. During the first few days, their paths crossed often, but their conversations remained light. He showed her how things worked around the ranch, explaining without making her feel incapable. She noticed how patient he was, not only with her but with everything. A stubborn gait, a restless horse, a broken tool, nothing seemed to frustrate him. He approached problems the same way: pause, understand, then act. She, on the other hand, carried tension in her shoulders, in her breath, in the way her eyes scanned every room. She did not trust calm easily. Calm had fooled her before. She believed that silence often hid disappointment, that patience sometimes masked distance. Yet something about his presence made it harder to hold on to those beliefs. At night she lay awake listening to the sounds of the land. Coyotes in the distance, wind brushing against the walls. The quiet was deep, almost alive. Her thoughts drifted to moments she wished she could forget, times when she had ignored her own doubts, when she had rushed into things hoping fear would disappear on its own. It never did. Fear only grew when it was ignored. She told herself she would be different now. Careful, observant, unattached. During the day she worked alongside others, but it was often him who checked in quietly, asking if she needed help without assuming she did. He never hovered, never disappeared, just stayed within reach. That balance confused her. She was used to extremes, too much or not enough. His steadiness felt like something she didn't have a name for yet. One afternoon, while fixing a fence together, the silence between them felt comfortable rather than awkward. The sun was warm, the sky open. She found herself talking without planning to. Small things at first, where she came from, how long she planned to stay. He listened, nodding slightly, never interrupting. When she stopped, worried she had said too much, he didn't rush to fill the space. He simply let the moment rest. That was when she realized how rare that was. She noticed the way he respected time, not just his own but hers. If she hesitated, he waited. If she pulled back, he gave space. There was no pressure to be anything other than what she was that day. Some days she was quiet, other days she was distant. He accepted it all with the same calm expression. Still, uncertainty followed her like a shadow. She questioned her own reactions. Was she imagining safety where there was none? Was she reading meaning into kindness simply because she longed for it? She reminded herself again and again not to confuse patience with intention. She had made that mistake before, yet something felt different here, not exciting in a loud, dramatic way. Different in a slow, steady way, like the land itself. Nothing in the West rushed. The days unfolded at their own pace, teaching her that waiting did not always mean wasting time. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft colors, she stood watching the horizon. He joined her without a word, standing at a respectful distance. They watched the light fade together. No expectations, no promises, just shared quiet. In that moment, she felt something loosen inside her chest. Not hope exactly, not trust, but a pause in the constant guarding, a brief rest from the fear of what might happen next. She did not know then that this was the beginning of something important. Not because of grand gestures or instant connection, but because, for the first time in a long while, she was not being asked to move faster than her heart could handle. And he, with his calm eyes and steady presence, seemed content to let the night come slowly, just as it was meant to. The days that followed began to feel heavier for her, not because anything bad happened, but because something quiet was growing inside her. She noticed it in small moments, when she looked for him without meaning to, or when his calm voice stayed with her longer than it should have. These feelings made her uncomfortable. She had promised herself she would not get attached. She had come here to heal, not to open new doors. She reminded herself often that patience did not always mean interest, and kindness did not always mean connection. Still, the way he treated her felt different from what she had known before. He never asked personal questions, yet somehow made space for honesty. He never tried to impress her, yet she found herself impressed by the simplest things. The way he greeted elders with respect, the way he cared for the land as if it were family, the way he listened without planning his next words. That balance made her unsure of herself. She began to pull back without realizing it at first. Her answers became shorter. Her smiles came less easily. When he offered help, she politely declined, even when she could have used it. Distance felt safer. Distance meant control. She believed that if she kept things practical and surface level, her heart would stay protected. He noticed the change, but he did not question it. That unsettled her more than confrontation would have. She expected confusion or frustration, but instead, he adjusted quietly. He gave her more space without disappearing. He spoke when necessary, stayed silent when words were not needed. His patience felt steady, not passive. This made her question her own reactions. In the past, she had been taught, directly and indirectly, that affection had a deadline. That if you did not respond quickly enough, interest would fade. That hesitation meant loss. Those lessons had left scars. She often felt rushed into decisions she wasn't ready to make, afraid that slowing down would cost her everything. Now, for the first time, no one was rushing her. That should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt unfamiliar, almost frightening. Without pressure, she was forced to face her own fear instead of reacting to someone else's demands. She could no longer blame outside forces for her uncertainty. It was hers alone. Some evenings she avoided common areas just to escape her thoughts. Other times she stayed busy until exhaustion quieted her mind. Still, moments slipped through. A shared glance across the yard. A simple "Are you all right?" spoken with genuine concern. These moments stirred emotions she thought she had buried long ago. She began to wonder if patience could be a form of care. One afternoon, while working near the stables, she made a mistake that set her back hours. Frustration rose quickly, sharp and familiar. Her hands shook as she tried to fix it on her own. When he noticed, he approached slowly, asking if she wanted help. His tone carried no judgment, only presence. She wanted to say no. Pride and fear urged her to push him away. But something inside her softened. She nodded. They worked side by side in silence. He showed her what to do without making her feel foolish. When the task was done, he stepped back, letting the success belong to her. That small act stayed with her longer than she expected. Later that night, she realized her uncertainty wasn't only about him. It was about herself. She no longer trusted her instincts. She had ignored them once and the cost had been high. Now, every feeling came with doubt. Every connection felt like a risk. She started noticing how different he was from the patterns she knew. He did not demand attention. He did not interpret silence as rejection. He did not try to define their connection. He allowed it to exist without labels. That freedom was both comforting and confusing. Sometimes she caught him watching the horizon the way she did, quiet, thoughtful, grounded. In those moments, she sensed that he understood waiting in a way she did not yet. Waiting without fear. Waiting without expectation. One evening, as the sky darkened and work slowed, they sat near the fire with others nearby. Laughter floated through the air, light and easy. She listened more than she spoke, feeling present without feeling exposed. He sat across from her, offering a quiet smile now and then. Nothing more. That night she lay awake thinking about how calm felt different here. It did not hide disappointment. It did not come with conditions. It simply existed. Yet her fear remained. She worried that if she leaned into this steadiness, she would lose herself again. She worried that patience might eventually turn into distance, and that she would blame herself for not moving fast enough. Old wounds whispered warnings she had learned to respect. The next day, she kept her distance again. He noticed, and once more he respected it. No questions, no disappointment, just acceptance. That was when she realized something important. His patience was not a test, it was a choice. And that realization unsettled her more than anything else. Because if he was choosing patience freely, then her uncertainty was not something she needed to defend against. It was simply part of her journey. For the first time, she wondered what might happen if she stopped fighting it and allowed herself to move at her own pace. She wasn't ready yet. She knew that. But she was beginning to understand that not all connections demanded certainty right away. Some were willing to wait. As time passed, the quiet space she had created around herself began to feel smaller. What once felt like protection now felt like pressure. Her thoughts followed her everywhere, while working, while resting, even while laughing with others. She was caught between what felt safe and what felt honest, and the distance between those two things grew wider each day. She noticed how often he appeared in her thoughts, not in dramatic ways but gently, the sound of his voice when he spoke calmly, the way he never rushed through moments, the way he noticed details others ignored. These thoughts made her uneasy. She worried that she was slowly losing the control she had worked so hard to rebuild. To regain balance, she told herself she needed to stay focused. She volunteered for extra work, took longer routes just to avoid familiar places, and kept conversations short. She believed that if she stayed busy enough, her feelings would fade. But feelings did not fade just because they were ignored. They only waited quietly, growing stronger with time. He noticed her efforts to create distance, even when she tried to hide them. But again, he did not confront her. He did not question her choices. He simply remained consistent. That consistency was beginning to test her more than any argument ever could. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept across the land. The sky darkened quickly and the wind carried a sharp edge. Everyone moved fast, securing tools and guiding animals to safety. In the rush, she slipped and hurt herself slightly. It wasn't serious, but the surprise and fear shook her more than the pain. Before she could even call out, he was there. Not panicked, not forceful, just present. He helped her up carefully, making sure she was steady before letting go. His calm grounded her. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to lean into that steadiness without overthinking it. Later, as the storm passed and the world grew quiet again, she felt the weight of that moment. She realized how quickly she had trusted him without hesitation. That realization frightened her. Trust had once come easily to her, and she had paid dearly for it. Now she questioned every instinct. That evening she pulled away again. She avoided eye contact, kept conversations polite but distant. Inside, she felt torn. Part of her wanted to stay close to what felt safe and real. Another part warned her that closeness always came with loss. He sensed the shift but did not change. His patience did not weaken. His presence did not harden. That steadiness forced her to face something she had avoided for a long time. The fear was no longer about him. It was about what she believed she deserved. She had learned to expect disappointment. She had learned that good moments were temporary, and calm was often followed by chaos. Because of this, she struggled to believe in quiet happiness. She didn't know how to live in it without waiting for it to end. One night, sleep would not come. Her thoughts felt loud, restless. She stepped outside to breathe, letting the cool air calm her racing mind. The stars were bright, scattered across the sky like reminders of how small her worries might be in the grand scheme of things. She didn't expect to see him there too, standing at a distance, looking at the same sky. Neither of them spoke at first. The silence felt heavy but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that asked for honesty without demanding it. She wanted to speak. Words gathered in her chest, full of fear and confusion, but she didn't know where to begin. How do you explain uncertainty without sounding ungrateful? How do you admit fear without pushing someone away? Before she could decide, she took a step back. The habit was automatic. Retreat before vulnerability. He noticed, but instead of moving closer, he stayed where he was. His voice, when he finally spoke, was calm and gentle. There was no pressure in his words, no demand for explanation, just understanding. That was the moment everything inside her shifted. She realized that things were getting harder not because something was wrong, but because something was real. Real connections required honesty, and honesty required courage. She had been protecting herself from pain, but she had also been protecting herself from growth. Her emotions felt tangled, fear mixed with curiosity, hesitation mixed with longing. She felt close to a breaking point, though she didn't yet know what would break. The walls she had built were strong, but they were beginning to feel heavy. That night she allowed herself to sit with the discomfort instead of running from it. She admitted to herself that she cared, that she felt safe in his presence, that his patience did not feel like distance but like respect. Still, she wasn't ready to move forward. But she was no longer willing to pretend nothing was happening. As she went back inside, she knew something had changed. The balance she had tried to maintain was no longer possible. She could either keep retreating until there was nothing left, or she could face the uncertainty head-on. And for the first time, she considered that uncertainty might not be something to fear, but something to understand. The tension inside her did not disappear. If anything, it grew stronger. But beneath it was a quiet realization. Things were getting worse because she was standing at the edge of change. And change, no matter how gentle, always demanded courage. The days after that quiet night felt different to her. Nothing around her had changed, yet everything inside her had shifted. She could no longer pretend she was untouched. The calm she had been standing near was now asking something from her, not action, not promises, but honesty. And honesty was the one thing she had been avoiding. She became more aware of herself. The way her chest tightened when she saw him. The way her thoughts slowed when he was near. The way she listened more carefully, not just to him, but to her own feelings. It was exhausting. Facing uncertainty took more energy than running from it ever had. She began to realize how often she had lived her life in reaction mode. Always responding, always adjusting, always preparing for disappointment. She had built her strength around survival, not around peace. And now peace felt unfamiliar, almost dangerous. He continued to be the same. That consistency became impossible to ignore. He didn't change his tone. He didn't change his distance. He didn't change his care. There was no sudden closeness, no pulling away, just presence. Steady and calm. That steadiness brought her to a quiet breaking point. One afternoon, while working alone, her thoughts grew heavy. Memories surfaced, times when she had ignored her doubts because she wanted to believe in something good. Times when she had spoken up too late or not at all. She realized she had never truly allowed herself to say what she felt while it still mattered. Silence had always felt safer than honesty, but silence had also cost her. She stopped what she was doing and sat down, staring at the ground. Her hands trembled slightly. She knew that if she continued like this, holding everything inside, something would eventually collapse. Either she would leave without understanding why, or she would stay and feel trapped by her own fear. Neither choice felt right. That evening, as the sky softened into dusk, she found him near the fire again. Others were nearby at first, but slowly the space cleared. The moment felt heavy, like it had been waiting for her. Her heart raced, urging her to walk away. She almost did, but this time she stayed. She sat across from him, quiet, unsure. He looked at her the same way he always had, with attention, not expectation. That made it harder to hide. She spoke slowly, choosing her words with care. She didn't explain everything. She didn't share every wound, but she shared enough. She told him she was afraid of moving too fast, afraid of trusting calm, afraid of herself when she started to care. She expected confusion, maybe disappointment. Instead, he listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix her fear or explain it away. When she finished, her voice shaky, he let the silence settle. Then he spoke gently, reminding her that fear was not something to rush through or ignore. He told her that patience wasn't about waiting for someone to change. It was about allowing them to be where they are. Those words landed deeply. She realized then that this moment, this conversation, was her breaking point. Not because something was falling apart, but because something inside her was finally opening. She had spent so long guarding herself that she forgot how to stand honestly in front of someone else. Tears came, surprising her, not from sadness but from relief. Relief that she didn't have to perform strength. Relief that she didn't have to decide everything right now. Relief that her uncertainty was not seen as a flaw. He didn't move closer. He didn't pull away. He stayed exactly where he was. That choice meant more to her than any gesture could have. In that moment, she understood something important. Trust was not built through bold moves or perfect timing. It was built through small, honest moments like this, moments where fear was allowed to exist without taking control. She took a deep breath and felt something release inside her chest. Not all the fear, not all the doubt, but enough to let her stand a little taller, breathe a little easier. That night, as she lay in bed, she didn't fight her thoughts. She let them come and go. She admitted that she cared. She admitted that she was scared. And she admitted that both things could exist at the same time. She also realized that her breaking point was not about choosing him or choosing herself. It was about choosing honesty over avoidance, courage over comfort. The next morning, she felt lighter. Not because everything was clear, but because she was no longer carrying her uncertainty alone. She noticed how the world seemed calmer when she stopped resisting her own feelings. She still moved slowly. She still needed space. But now that space felt intentional, not defensive. He noticed the change even though she didn't say anything. Her posture was softer, her eyes steadier. She met his gaze without looking away. Small things but meaningful. This was not the end of her fear. It was the beginning of understanding it. Her breaking point had not broken her. It had opened a door she had been afraid to approach. And for the first time she felt ready to walk forward, not quickly, not confidently, but honestly. The days that followed were calm but not empty. They carried a quiet warmth that settled slowly into her life. She noticed it in the way mornings felt lighter, in how her breath came easier, and in how her thoughts no longer raced the moment she opened her eyes. Nothing dramatic had changed. No promises were made. No decisions were announced. Yet something important had shifted deep inside her. She no longer felt the need to guard every feeling. She moved through her days with a softer heart. When she worked, she focused fully. When she rested, she allowed herself to rest without guilt. The constant tension she had lived with for so long began to loosen, piece by piece. She realized that strength did not always come from holding tight. Sometimes it came from allowing things to be. He remained steady, just as he always had. But now she understood his patience differently. It was not waiting for a reward. It was not silent pressure. It was simply who he was. That understanding brought her peace. She stopped questioning his intentions and began to trust his consistency. They spent more time together, still without forcing closeness. Sometimes they worked side by side in comfortable silence. Other times they shared simple conversations about the land, about life, about the passing of seasons. There was no rush to define what they were. The connection grew naturally, like something meant to take its time. She found herself smiling more without thinking about it, laughing without holding back, listening without fear. These small changes surprised her. She hadn't realized how much of herself she had hidden just to feel safe. One evening, they walked along the open land as the sun dipped low. The sky glowed with soft colors and the air felt gentle. She spoke about her past, not in detail but with honesty. She spoke about mistakes, about lessons learned the hard way, about the fear that had shaped her choices. He listened, not with pity but with understanding. When she finished, she felt lighter. Not because her past had disappeared, but because it no longer controlled her present. He shared parts of his life too, stories shaped by tradition, responsibility, and respect. He spoke about patience not as waiting, but as trust in time. His words stayed with her long after the conversation ended. She began to see the world differently. She noticed how the land never rushed, yet always moved forward. How night followed day without struggle. How growth happened quietly without demand. These observations felt like lessons meant just for her. Her uncertainty didn't vanish completely. It softened. It became something she could sit with instead of run from. She learned that uncertainty did not mean weakness. It meant she cared. And caring, she realized, was not something to fear. With time, trust grew, not suddenly but steadily. Trust in him, trust in herself, trust in the quiet path she was choosing. She no longer measured moments by what might go wrong. She allowed herself to enjoy what was right. Others around them noticed the change too. They saw how she seemed more at ease, more present. They saw how he remained calm and respectful, never claiming more than she was ready to give. There was a quiet understanding between them that needed no explanation. One night, under a sky full of stars, they sat together in silence. The same silence that once made her uncomfortable now felt safe. She remembered the words he had spoken earlier in their journey, words that had stayed with her through every moment of doubt. "We have all night." Now she understood what they truly meant. Not just time but patience. Not just waiting but presence. Not just stillness but care. She realized that love did not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it came gently, teaching instead of demanding. Sometimes it healed simply by being steady. Her journey had not been about finding someone else to complete her. It had been about finding the courage to be honest with herself, to stop running, to stop rushing, to allow life to meet her where she stood. In the end, the outcome was not a dramatic ending or a perfect resolution. It was something quieter and more meaningful. She learned that patience could hold love without pressure. That uncertainty could exist alongside trust. That healing did not require isolation. It required understanding. And as she stood there, grounded beneath the wide sky, She knew that whatever came next, she was no longer afraid to move forward. Not because all her doubts were gone, but because she had learned how to walk with them, slowly, honestly, and with an open heart.